Earlier this morning, when I got on YouTube, I had this video recommended to me. It was from TrueGreen7, a fellow PokeTuber. And man, the last time I saw him, he had nowhere near as much of subs as he has, almost 650,000, so congrats for him. And the video was the most controversial parts of every Pokemon generation. I was so interested in seeing that, and I watched it. It was like 20 minutes long. I thought it was really, really cool. So I wanted to react to it and give my thoughts on all the things that were brought up. So, let's get into it. And of course, TrueGreen7's original video and channel will be in the description if you want to go check it out too. And it's going to be in order from Gen 1 to 8. So we get started off with Kanto, of course.
Let's start with Gen 1. The first controversial parts of the game set in Kanto is the simplicity. Many people find them to be a perfect gateway into the franchise with a non-intrusive plot, freedom to explore, and the archetype for every region that came after it. But those who may not have any nostalgic feelings towards Kanto believe the region to be relatively bare bones with a boring plot and a bland landscape, not to mention a slew of technical problems in the first gen.
Yeah, it was very simple in Gen 1 because it was the first game. I mean, all like the first games of a series are always like simplistic compared to the later on games. I mean, that shouldn't be too much of a surprise. And don't forget to remember, they worked on Japanese Red and Green for over 5 years on such a tight budget, and they didn't think Pokemon was going to be as good as it was. And I believe it was Game Freak's first game too, so yeah, they really did not know what they were doing at first. And that's going to bring us into the next topic.
Speaking of which, the second controversial part of Generation 1 games are their glitches. Newer fans may see them as unpolished, unprofessional relics of the past, while other fans actually love to exploit these glitches that open up many new possibilities. It's part of what makes Gen 1 iconic, mysterious, and a part of modern conversation. Some Pokemon are even obtained through glitches like Mew, so glitches are part of the playstyle, therefore glitches had to be embraced.
Yep, Gen 1 was definitely one of the most broken games of the series, because like I said, they literally did not know what they were doing back then. That was a big part of the problem. Now, of course, I actually never did any of these glitches growing up because didn't know how to do them. Because also, too, I had like only one friend growing up that played Pokemon beside me. So, no one to really talk about possibility of glitches and all that. Plus, didn't really have internet back then either. But most of the glitches I've seen, like the more famous ones, you really have to go like out of your way to make them happen. It's not like the game's like broken, the game just glitches out like that. No, these glitches, like the infamous ones, you really have to go out of your way to do them. But I have done the Missing No glitch when I last played my physical copy of Red in 2011. That thing was very useful to max out rare candies and TMs I really needed. But at the same time, yeah, glitches are not something that should be acceptable in any game, even if it is your first one.
The third controversial aspect are the Pokemon themselves. The Gen 1 Pokemon weren't really controversial in the first few generations, but now that people inevitably complain about the designs of any newer gen while praising the first generation and its design philosophies, there's a counter movement of fans that will be hypercritical of Gen 1's Pokemon in order to show that Pokemon has always had a few bad designs.
This argument just never resonated for me. I don't really care about the Pokemon designs. I love all Pokemon regardless, so this one just never applied to me. Also, I don't ever recall seeing people complain about the designs of Gen 1 being like bad or anything.
Leading me to the last element, the generation in general. Other than the newest generation, this is the only generation that receives legitimate arguments over whether or not it's a quality generation. Since we have Gen 1ers who think Generation 1 is one of the only valuable generations, we have the opposite end of the extreme with Gen Whiners, fans who will jump at the opportunity to express dissatisfaction with Generation 1 and highlight its flaws. The average fan, though, has a perspective that is basically a mixture of both sides. Just like any generation, it is flawed but still enjoyable.
It's also, too, based upon bias. Like, if you, or like me, who played Pokemon since all the way back in Gen 1, you're gonna see probably more positive light than people nowadays do, since those were the very first games and we were with Pokemon from the very start of the series. But yeah, Gen 1 is very flawed for, like, the glitches that were just mentioned earlier, and how many moves and stuff were broken back then. And no physical special split and all that. Yeah, it's a very fucked up generation. Thank God Randomizer fixes it a lot in that regard. But now, off to Johto.
Now we're moving on to Generation 2 and Johto's controversial aspects. The first one is Johto's lack of plot. It's not necessarily egregious, but it's kind of the region with the least amount of plot. You have those who don't really care about plot in their Pokemon games and really enjoy Johto's non-linearity and freedom that arises from a small plot. But the opposite group of fans find Johto to be relatively boring and over-reliant on Kanto. To be fair, it was made to coincide with Kanto, but doesn't justify every single kind of Pokemon fan's playstyle. But what Pokemon game does?
Guys? I don't know if you don't notice this, but playing Pokemon for 20 years now, how do you not realize that almost all the games literally follow the exact same plot? You're a new trainer, you get your starter, go after 8 and get the 8 badges in most of the games, fight a villainous team, stop them, involving the legendary mascot of the game, take on the Elite Four, become champion. There you go. That's pretty much the game in its entirety. It's just told in a different way, in a different region, pretty much. But the main plot of the games largely remains exactly the same. So if you're going to really criticize Gen 2's story, you kind of have to criticize all of them because they really are the same. Plus, this doesn't really bug me too much.
The second point of contention is the non-linearity of Johto. Again, tons of people like that, and all the positive traits that come along with it, but a lot of fans also don't like the negative aspects that are a result of Johto's layout, such as the horrible level curve, bland trainer battles, and Pokemon availability.
Did he say bland trainer battles? I've never had that problem before when it came to battles being bland, but when it came to the level curve, yep, Gold, Silver, and... Well, actually, Johto entirely, pretty much, are like the easiest Pokemon games in that regard because the levels just don't go up that much. I mean, that's the lowest levels, too. By the time you get to Elite Four, the highest you see is Lance's Dragonite at 50. That's largely it. In fact, in my experience, you can easily be over-leveled for pretty much the entire point of the game unless you really tried to go out of your way to not be over-leveled. Because it's really easy to do that because the levels are not really that good. I mean, God, the trainers have levels that are really bad. God, you could even have someone... The juggler Norfolk Goldenrod has like a level 2 Electro when you very likely have already beaten Whitney. That's pretty sad. I think, though, the reason why they did that is because it's going to be brought up so you can explore Kanto and not be so over-leveled. But then the problem is, it's not as bad when you get in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. It's worse in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, where the level curve is much much Just do, like, gradual level increases. Don't do, like, in Gold, Silver, and Johto, I mean to say, where... The game's like so under-leveled to the point where you're easily going to be over-leveled by the time you even get to the Elite Four. And then all of a sudden, like when you go to Kanto, now they're like way higher. It needs to be gradual, and the level should have just been higher. Go into like the 50s and 60s when you're done by Johto, and then just continue on into Kanto.
It all comes down to the last controversial element, the post-game and Johto's Kanto dependency. Many fans often cite the revisit of a previous region as the holy grail of features. Others say that there's nothing major to do in the Kanto post-game other than battling the gym leaders. Maybe it's a quality versus quantity kind of argument. It could be people in the modern age being sick of Kanto, or it could be a counter-movement of those who are finally noticing Gold and Silver's flaws after 20 years of worship.
When it comes to not being able to do much in Kanto, guys, that's most post-game crap. I've said this too in my video on how what I want Pokemon to do to be better. That's literally how it always is for post-game. It literally is not much to do once you take on the Elite Four. Kanto, though, in Johto, that was probably the best post-game I've probably ever got to experience. And remember, we were really lucky to even get Kanto into Gold, Silver, Crystal. Thank Satoru Iwata for adding it in by compressing the game. Because that is something Game Freak could not do whatsoever. And of course, 20 years later, they still haven't learned how to do shit like that, apparently. So when it comes to like Gen 2, they probably couldn't add too much since it was a miracle that they even got to add Kanto in. And remember, they had to lower the quality of Kanto. They had to shrink a whole bunch of things like Viridian Forest wasn't there and such. But yeah, that is really getting annoying, though, the pandering of Gen 1. It really does get annoying, but that wasn't really much of a problem in Gen 2, of course. This is a problem more for later on. But yeah, most of the problems with Kanto back then is just simply a problem with post-game. In my experience, there's just not really much enjoyment after the post-game. That's why most of the times when I play a game, once I beat the Elite Four, if it's a ROM, I'll just delete the game if it's randomized. Or do a new game on physical games later on. That's how I usually do shit. Because I'm almost never the person that keeps a save file permanently as it is. I usually like to replay it over and over and over again. And now, off to Hoenn!
Hoenn time. Gen 3 is when generations began to be contentious. The first controversy is probably how Ruby and Sapphire are not backwards compatible with Gens 1 and 2. This was the first NatDex controversy, since for 2 years, you couldn't acquire every Pokemon or transfer the Pokemon you previously raised into Gen 3. Of course, those who don't transfer Pokemon from previous gens or understood the technical limitations that caused this problem weren't too happy that fans were dropping the franchise for reasons that seemed to them pretty petty.
Well, what's petty to you might not be petty to others, so fuck all of you who don't see a problem with it. But at the same time, it's not the same thing like it is in Swish, because in Ruby Sapphire, and of course this is the case too for Black and White, which is going to be brought up later. Of course, this was like one of the arguments people had for defending Switch, like, oh, in Ruby and Sapphire and Black and White, you couldn't get all the Pokemon in those games, so why is it a big deal now? The main difference is the Pokemon were in the game. In Swish's case, they were not. That's the fundamental difference, and that's why it's not comparable. Now, when it comes to the technical limitation part, that I don't really buy that argument really much anymore, because I remember, God, I wish I could find this. There was a video someone made back in 2014 where either they made this or they found a program that allowed this, but there was a program, at least for ROMs, that you could actually transfer Pokemon over from Gen 2 to Gen 3. I'm not kidding. I seriously saw that before. I wish I could find it, but that was so old, it would probably be very difficult to find. But there is a program that you actually can transfer Gen 2 Pokemon over to Gen 3. So it is actually possible. So in my eyes, I just view it more as Game Freak just being fucking lazy. Because the argument for the technical reason why they couldn't transfer them over is because they had, I believe it was different ways to how they calculate IVs, I think, or something like that. But like I said, someone made a program in 2014 that did allow transfer over, so if they can, why the fuck could you not do it, Game Freak? Or perhaps, being more conspiratorial, how much you want to bet they did on purpose, so it'll make you more important to get Coliseum, XD, and Fire Red and Leaf Green if you want to complete your entire decks. Because we know there's one thing Game Freak, Nintendo, and all corporations, all they care about is money.
The pettiest controversy revolves around contests. While it's one of the only features here that doesn't affect the entire game, that's kind of the reason it made the list. It's one of the few side features that people often cite as the worst part of the generation. You can easily not play through any Pokemon contest, and to some, it's actually a really fun experience. So these spectaculars are extra controversial because fans either hate them or love them.
I didn't really do contests much, it's just not really that interesting to me. But I never heard it being like an actual controversy about it being there. So, I mean, I say this to the people that don't like the feature. If you don't like contests, just simply don't do it. At least it's not being forced down your throat, unlike a whole bunch of other features are. But I do think they features, like I said in my video about how I want Pokemon to be better. Features like contests and all of them, they need to be permanently into the game. Like, if they ever do the Diamond Pearl remake, which had contests too, once you make the contest, please, for the love of God, just make them permanently into the game. Why do all that work? Because you gotta make all the appeal and shit stats for the moves. Why do all that work just for one game? That is retarded. Just keep them in there for good. That way, if people want to use contests because they enjoy them, they should be able to. There's no reason why you have to not have them in all the other games. Same goes for the other features too. They should all just be in the games once they're made.
But the third and most famous controversial opinion in Hoenn is the water. To many, the overabundance of water routes kinda ruins the game. They are relatively barren and contain the same few Pokemon, but other fans find it to be a staple of Hoenn for many reasons, like its importance to the plot, how the water in various islands make the adventure feel vast and wondrous, the inclusion of diving, and maybe even the music. It highlights the theme of the region, but it doesn't change the opinion of those who take 2.2 points off this region's score simply because it has too much water.
Oh, the classic meme! Too much water! Ah! That was awesome! Oh god, I remember that stupid fucking bitch giving that low rating because of the water. Oh, that was awesome remembering that. I think this problem comes down to two things. One, being forced to have an HM slave, but hey, at least in Surf's case, Surf is a pretty good move. It was better back then now since it didn't hit your teammate in double battles. But yeah, it's still a move that's required, and HM moves are not really that good. Not really good to be forced to have a move required in order to go somewhere, at least for me. So that's probably one of the reasons why. Another thing is because people don't want to traverse through a whole bunch of areas and all that. For me, most of the times when I play through Hoenn, I almost completely ignore everything near Pacific Logtown unless I'm forced to go there like in Emerald. Like, I almost never go there anymore. Especially, I ignore the routes completely where it has all the currents because I don't feel like having to go through all the crap to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth just to battle the trainers in order to get through the route because the currents fuck me up and all that shit. You can't use, like, walk through walls in that area either. It doesn't work. So, I just ignore them in that regard. So, I can understand to some regard why people find it annoying. Maybe if they got rid of that current crap or made it easier just to go back instead of having to do, like, fly or something. And maybe not... I bet if they did, like, a remake of this game in the future without, like, HMs, I bet a lot of the problems would probably not be as controversial.
It also exacerbates the next controversial inclusion. Team Aqua and Magma. They're the most controversial evil teams in Pokemon, because there are those that cite them as the big flaw of Hoenn games. They think both teams should have known that their plans would have destroyed the Earth, that Team Magma just likes land, and that Team Aqua just likes the ocean, which makes them hard to take seriously, while the other side claims that, especially in the remakes, it's clear how Team Magma wants to increase the landmass so that there is more room for humanity's advancement. They want to create the final or Omega stage for human development, while Team Aqua believes that humanity's progress is tainting the world and the lives of Pokemon, and they want to revert the Earth back to its primal or alpha state, where it's mostly water, the origin of all life, and the best environment for Pokemon to thrive in. Obviously, they're both crazy and taking their ideals to an extreme, but that's literally what all evil teams with a plan have done. The most interesting villains in all of fiction, like Thanos, are blinded by their ideals and don't see any other path than the extreme. Not to mention, all of this was literally social commentary on real-world events that were happening in Japan at the time. Check out Tama's review of Ruby and Sapphire for further explanation.
This one, I've actually never heard of that Team Aqua and Team Magma are the most controversial villains in the series. Usually, I hear it being more like Flare, or Plasma, or even Skull and Yell more recently. I've never heard of Team Aqua and Magma being the most controversial. That is completely new to me. But as TrueGreen7 says, yeah, these people like Team Aqua and Team Magma are ideologues. Ideologues don't think about, like, the consequences of their action. They seek the goal, that's it, consequences be damned. So that's fitted for them to not see how not good their idea is. And I like how they did that in Oras, where they made their goals more clear. And I would say, of all the villainous groups, Team Aqua is actually probably the worst in terms of the outcomes, because think of it. They want to flood the world, kill every person, and land Pokemon too, to put the world back to its primal state. That, I would argue, is probably the worst outcome of all of the villainous team's motives. Their goal would even kill themselves. They're suicidal, for God's sake. They want to do an actual extinction of the entire world in order to fulfill their goals, even at the expense of their own lives. And that's why I say Team Aqua in Oras is the most worst of the villainous teams in terms of motives.
The last controversial aspect is only related to the remakes. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire's lack of Battle Frontier. Many fans are disappointed by its exclusion, and especially the excuse by Game Freak that kids nowadays wouldn't even have the attention span to play them. The original Battle Frontier made Emerald a legendary game, and to some, the refusal to go the extra mile actually ruins the entire game, since Heart Gold and Soul Silver included a Battle Frontier when they didn't have to. A lot of fans who weren't too picky before started to become critical of Game Freak at this very moment. It contrasts with those who enjoyed the game nonetheless, and maybe are a bit disappointed by the lack of Battle Frontier, but didn't expect one or were super satisfied with the Delta episode and the other post-game features.
Yeah, that's very bad. That is very, very, very bad of them not to include Battle Frontier. I don't even really do the stuff, Battle Frontier and stuff like that, because it's post-game. I don't really pay attention to post-game crap. But that was really, really bad. I was definitely expecting to have Battle Frontier in it. I mean, they had it in Emerald. Why the fuck would they not have it in Oras? And the excuse they gave was so condescending and so retarded. First off, kids do have the attention span to do that shit. I did. Let's see. Emerald came out here. First May of 2005. I was 11. I paid attention to that crap a lot back then. And I wasn't even a competitive player, for God's sake. Of course kids have the mind span to want to do the Battle Frontier. What the fuck are you talking about? And more importantly, you do know that adults play Pokemon too. In fact, there was a poll done right after Sun and Moon's release on the average age of Pokemon players, and guess what it was? It was 25. So, the average age of Pokemon players back then, 4 years ago, is 25. Just like the average age of adult video gamers are in the 30s. So, guess what, Nintendo? It's mostly not kids that are playing Pokemon anymore. It's mostly adults. So maybe you should consider catering to adult themes more in the Pokemon instead, since we're the majority of your fan base. And go fuck off with that shitty excuse too. That was disgusting. But for me and my experience back in Gen 3, yeah, it did seem like the low point at Pokemon at the time was Gen 3. God, Pokemon was like put to the wayside. Yu-Gi-Oh was like the new thing and all that. But then, when we got to Gen 4, oh boy, that's when shit really started to turn around. So now let's see what the controversies of Gen 4 are.
Now it's Sinnoh's turn. The first major controversial part is the region itself. As you'd expect, to most fans, Sinnoh is vast, relatively diverse, has many secrets to uncover, dynamic routes, and atmosphere galore. But on the other hand, its over-reliance on HMs and atrocious route obstacles makes it really annoying to traverse through the landscape of Sinnoh. In the end, it's all about what you focus on and prioritize. The average person can immerse themselves in Sinnoh while still acknowledging that many of these obstacles could have been handled better.
Oh god, the snow routes were really annoying. So difficult to move through, even when speeding up on emulator. Hell, recently, last time I went through there on my role plays on Diamond Pearl Platinum, I would use walk through walls, go into the mystery zone boundary, get on the bike, and then get back on. I could go through the snow really quickly on bike, because you normally cannot go through on bikes. That's how desperate I was to go through really quickly. And then of course it was bad because the blinding snow and the Pokeballs items being covered by the snow so much, it made it harder for them to see, because remember, one of the items you need there is rock climb, so that's really bad that you need to go look through the snow to find it. Very annoying. And yeah, the region relied way too much on HMs. If I'm correct too, I think Victory Road, I believe, required the most HMs. I think 5. Strength, Rock Smash, Surf, Waterfall, and Flash, I think too, but Flash isn't really a requirement. But yeah, they relied too much on HMs. I'm sure when they do the Diamond Pearl remake, that'll be much, much more resolved, since HMs are no longer a thing. And of course, they didn't bring it up, but they were implying the linear aspect. I'm going to talk about that when we get to Gen 5, when it made the main important controversy of that gen.
Next are the legendary Pokemon. Nowadays, people are nostalgic for the days when Legendaries were this epic and story-driven events were packaged with distributions. But back in the day, some people didn't like the scale of these Legendaries. Some thought it was too ambitious and kinda ridiculous to encounter and train literal Pokemon gods, creators of space, time, antimatter, emotion, will, knowledge, and the universe itself. There are also too many Legendaries, and I don't see that as a problem, but people did, I swear. And a lot of people thought they were over-designed, but that's minor.
I also have never heard of this argument about the Legendaries being a controversy in Gen 4. Man, I don't get how these controversies just were completely unknown to me, because I've been in the Pokemon community my entire life, and I never, ever hear some of these things. Some of these things I just think are just brought up like out of the blue for no reason. The only thing I would say about I don't think there was a problem with how many Legendaries there were. The only problem I would see with the Legendaries back then is, yeah, like the event crap. I've never really liked that, especially since, God, some of them take years and years and years. I remember with Mew, for example, back then. Let's see, the first time was 1999. They didn't release Mew again until 2006. That's a 7-year gap. That is ridiculous. And then like 2009, all that. Yeah, that's bullshit. There's no reason why they should do these event Pokemon every, like, half decade or more. It should be possible just to get them into games. That is bullshit to make people who can't get them back then. God, can you imagine if someone like me missed getting Mew in 1999 and didn't know about the Mew glitch, waiting that long to actually get it legit? Sorry, that's just horseshit, and you deep down know that that's actually correct. And then, of course, the only other problem I have with Gen 4 is the Roman aspect. Oh god, Cresselia, and then Mashspit. Oh Jesus Christ, Mashspit took me like 2 months to get. It was so fucking annoying. No wait, that was Cresselia, but you get the point. There's no frickin' reason why it should take me that goddamn long to get a Pokemon. I am so glad Roman is gone.
The third controversial feature was the Distortion World. While many people see it as a puzzle-filled additional location with a fight and legendary encounter, others see it as a waste of time, a boring void, and an overrated feature. Just like most of these entries, the reality is probably a mix of both.
My only problem for Distortion World is how often you can get lost in there, because it's so easy to get lost in there. I get lost in there like all the damn time, and then the strength requirement, oh god, that is annoying. It's pretty difficult to go backwards in the areas, at least from my experience, in the Distortion World. But other than that, I don't really have an opinion of it. And I hope when they do the Diamond Pearl remakes, I hope they bring back the Distortion World for post-game crap to get guaranteed. That would be awesome.
Fourth is the inclusion of many Pokemon evolutions in babies. Babies are controversial in general, but relatively harmless. But the huge amount of new evolved forms to previous Mons had a mixed reception. A lot of people thought they were cool, useful, nostalgic, and heavily anticipated, while others saw it as a crutch that brought us less completely new Sinnoh Pokemon, a mixed bag with a lot of weird designs that didn't improve on the originals, and sometimes an embarrassment. What do you think?
Again, another controversy not only have I never heard of, in fact, I've heard the exact opposite back then in the late 2000s, that people overwhelmingly loved the new evolutions. Like, finally, Pokemon that needed evolutions finally got them. So I never really heard this, so I'm really confused by it.
And finally, a minor problem, but something often cited as the worst flaw in Sinnoh: the lack of fire types. In Diamond and Pearl, you could only get 2 fire type families in the main game, including the starters. This was kinda fixed in Platinum, but the amount of fire types was still laughable. The reason this is controversial isn't because some hated this and some liked it. It was more that some really noticed and others didn't at all. Because, you know, if you literally don't want a fire type, this wouldn't matter to you.
Yeah, that is very, very, very bad, what Game Freak did, not having so many fire types. Remember, in Diamond Pearl, I'm not kidding, before the post game, you only had two fire type families in main story of Diamond Pearl. Chimchar, Ponyta. That is it. That is really, really fucking bad. And it's even worse because they had Flint in the games, a fire type Elite 4 user. His team was 3/5 not fire, for God's sakes. What was it? Rapidash, Infernape, Lumpini, Steelix, and Driftbloom. Like, come on, man. Why the fuck did they add a fire type Elite 4 member when they had so few fire types? That was stupid of them to do that. So fucking stupid. They should have added more fire types into the region. And no, I don't want to hear the excuse about them adding more in Platinum. Those Pokemon in Platinum, the fire types they add, they should have been in there in Diamond Pearl. I don't want to hear any excuse about it. That was just really bad design on their part. That is definitely something that needed to be criticized and called out for. Now, off to Black and White.
Now we enter an example of a controversial generation in general. People's opinions of Generation 5 is the most fickle and unpredictable in the entire franchise. It used to be considered the worst, and now it's considered the best? I mean, as a Unova fan, there isn't a problem here, but Unova does showcase how this fandom isn't fully united. The first controversy are the Pokemon themselves. People hate them or love them. I think people who dislike Gen 5 Pokemon cite the ice cream, the garbage, all the object Mons, ripoff or reboot Mons, humanoid Mons, ugly Mons, and even the ones that are super intricate. It just seems like to them there is a reason to dislike every single Pokemon in this gen, while those who love it think that Unova has some of the best designed Pokemon in the franchise. So many Gen 5 Pokemon look dangerous or mysterious or, you know, cool. In reality, it's the generation with the most amount of Mons, and because of that, there are more chances to hit, but also more chances to miss. They focused on quantity over quality, but because of the quantity, there are as much quality Mons as other generations, just not percentage-wise.
Generation 5 is really weird for me because that is, in my eyes, Pokemon's peak. Like, literally everything I wanted in Pokemon at the time, I got. So I was extremely satisfied with Black and White. And maybe Pokemon and Game Freak should learn to go back to the roots of Black and White, and maybe Pokemon would be much better off. So, growing up, playing Black and White was fine enough, just past 10 years old recently, so yay. I never, ever, ever, ever heard anyone complain about the Pokemon designs back then. I never did. Just like the other criticism coming up, I never hear this shit that people complain about all the games. I heard nothing but overwhelming praise of the designs. And it's not because, oh, you're just biased because you love Gen 5, like you said, it did everything you want. No, I've never seen this shit ever be said, and I do looked up, especially back then too, more actively. I was on so many of like the main Pokemon forums back then. I just never seen this. So I always find it really weird how the criticisms of Black and White pop up like out of nowhere, out of my eyes. But when it comes to designs themselves, it's just going to be completely subjective. For me, I just like Pokemon no matter what. I don't really give two fucks about the designs. That's why, to me, criticizing the Pokemon designs are largely irrelevant to me.
But this problem was worse because of the next aspect. The fact that Black and White only had Gen 5 Pokemon during the main game. I get it, to those who didn't get attached to Gen 5 Mons and fell in love with their teams, this is a huge problem. The Pokemon themselves are the biggest reasons most people play Pokemon, so you basically don't have fun if your team isn't to your liking. But to the average fan who liked these Pokemon just as much as any other new roster, it was a cool opportunity to simulate the excitement and wonder that fans felt during Gen 1, where all the Pokemon in the region were new and mysterious. And those in the middle like Gen 5 Mons, but missed playing with old Pokemon as well.
This might actually be controversial to a lot of people that probably follow me, but guys, this is more of a regional dex thing. Like all the other games, the Pokemon are in the game. Like people like to try to compare it to Swish. No, it's not the same. The Pokemon are still in the game. You just can't catch them in the main storyline, but they're still there. That's the fundamental difference I have to keep pointing out to people that defend Swish. But guys, this is more of a regional dex thing. Each region has Pokemon that you can only catch in that region pretty much. This is Unova's regional dex in Black and White. So I mean, if you're going to criticize Black and White for doing this, you honestly would have to criticize all the other regions since they also have the same thing, where you can only catch a lot of Pokemon after the post-game by importing and catching in post-game regions. Now, of course, in my eyes, there's ways you can get around this, even with Black and White. You could trade. Like, God, I just remember this too earlier today when I was watching this video. Because I remember back in late 2011, early 2012, I did a new game on both my Platinum and my Japanese Heart Gold game. And you know what I did in those games? I actually traded Pokemon from each region back and forth. God, I remember in that Heart Gold game, I actually had Gabite getting ready to go for the Elite Four. I was going to have a fucking Garchomp to just destroy everyone in the Elite Four. I was so looking forward to that. That's one way you can go about it. You could just trade Pokemon over. And then you also had Action Replay, because that's why I started using Action Replay in Black and White. So I actually was able to get all the Pokemon I would want too. And of course, there was also the Dream World. Yeah, back in Dream World, because I've actually played the original Japanese version of Dream World. Oh my god, that was a bitch trying to do all that in Japanese. But I was able to get a whole bunch of older Pokemon from the Dream World. Before I even took on the Elite Four, I must add. Yeah, I was able to do it before the Elite Four. Get a whole bunch of like Gen 1, 2, and 3s in the game somehow. But I mean, there were ways to get around it, and you still can to this day. But guys, view this more as a regional dex problem. And if you don't like the regional dex problem in Black and White, then you have to also be consistent and be against the regional dexes in all the other games. That's why I say, why not just have the games have all the Pokemon available to catch? That way this problem will be completely resolved. But of course, we know that will never happen, because then one of the reasons that will get rid of one of the main reasons why they make two games, that would be half the revenue they would make. And since I brought the regional dex thing up, I'm actually going to bring up Swish in this regard. If the regional dex of Swish was the 400-something Pokemon that were there, but the other Pokemon were still in the game, I don't think most people would have any problem whatsoever. The National Dex debacle wouldn't have happened, and Swish would not have had the meltdown that it caused and was justified in.
Next is Unova's linearity, both in progression and layout. It was the first region to prioritize the story, so the path you take is pretty fixed, basically taking you on a circle around the region. People felt less free and that the choices were less significant. You can't go out of your way to battle any new gym leaders out of order, or you can't discover a new path to get to where you want to go, so the journey feels more artificial. But the opposing opinion is that Unova offers many split and off-beaten paths to almost every route or landmark. This is how you progress through the region, but these are all the paths you can take and places you can explore, and that doesn't include all the intricate landmarks like caves and dungeons. It's not like you're on rails, the routes themselves are dynamic and even change and open up based on season and HMs that you have, which are less intrusive than the HMs in Sinnoh, especially now that TMs are infinite. So yes, freedom from place to place is linear, but the locations themselves are some of the most dynamic in the franchise. And to be fair, Black and White 2 fixed the linear progression.
This might be another controversial thing, but I actually like the linear aspect more. I'm not really a fan of going back and forth to like previous areas in order to collect stuff. Most of it was due to the the HM problem I mentioned earlier back in Hoenn. Like, I didn't really have this problem when I went through Sun and Moon, Ultra and Ultra Moon, going back to previous areas once I got the rideable Pokemon, since it wasn't forced to have a TM and all that, HM and all that. So maybe, like, in future games, if they have this stuff, it wouldn't be a problem, but I have no real problem just going back and forth. I'm going straight forward the entire game and not going back at all. Because, yeah, I do prefer the story over exploring.
Lastly, animated sprites. It's no controversy that these were better than static sprites and that they were the natural next step, but to some they were too pixelated and looked terrible up close. To others, they were lively, full with even more personality and honestly impressive. This has become less controversial though, since more and more people have come to like this style now that Gen 8's animations are being dragged by fans, but nostalgia for this style now exists.
No opinion on it whatsoever. Now off to Gen 6.
Especially after Gen 6's first controversy, the jump to 3D. People have waited for this since the end of Generation 4, and some people didn't even like how Gen 5 was too visually similar to Gen 4. But when we got 3D, the reception was mixed. People were definitely impressed that Game Freak and Creatures Inc. were able to model, texture, and animate 720 plus Pokemon, and almost everybody loved the dynamic camera angles and backgrounds, but a lot of fans also think that the textures are too washed out, some Pokemon didn't translate well into 3D, and the idle poses of our Pokemon are too static, while in the past, they always looked like they were ready to attack.
When it comes to the animations in that regard, guys, we do have to admit, as much as we shit on Swish in that regard, this largely has been a thing for the entire series, where the animations are usually static until they attack. That's even Statement 2 had that problem in that regard, where they're mostly idle, unless you do a move, or if you sit around the camera much, they'll finally react to the camera and all that. Because, yeah, some of those idle poses, especially Pokemon that fly, God, they look bad.
Our second controversy was the amount of new Pokemon. Kalos introduced the smallest roster out of any new region. Some fans simply didn't enjoy that fact, while others claimed that this small roster is the reason Kalos has such a solid and undisputed batch of new Mons. It chose quality over quantity. But the other side's argument can be that other regions have way more Pokemon with the same amount of quality, and that Mega Evolution took away our opportunity for more new Pokemon.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest problem with Gen 6, is how few new Pokemon there were. We went from Gen 5, that had 156 new Pokemon, the most ever in a generation, to I can't remember what it was, 70-something in Gen 6, the lowest number ever in a generation. That's just unacceptable to me. And for me, like I said, I don't really care about designs. When it comes to the amount of Pokemon, I value quantity over quality every single damn day. I said before in my video how I want Pokemon to be better. I want the black and white amount every time. Every new region, I want to be at least 150, if not more. I want as many Pokemon as possible. I don't want this 70 or 80 or 90. No, that's just not enough for me. Sorry. 150 plus, no under that.
Leading us to our most controversial aspect, Mega Evolution. When it was released, people simply weren't keen to change. Some compared an extra temporary evolution to Digimon, they thought a lot of new Megas were over-designed, that Game Freak jumped the shark and gave us an unbalanced feature that made the average battle in X and Y even easier, catered to Gen 1ers, and made popular Pokemon more overrated. But the other side basically thinks what most people think nowadays, that the new designs were amazing, a good way to make some Pokemon relevant, and that they made the meta a bit more fun. It introduced some good lore and helped expand the world of Pokemon.
Mega Evolution is also a controversy I never heard of being a problem back in 2013 and such. I heard nothing but praise, people are praising it right now, so never heard of any of the controversial aspects of it. But it does make the game easier, but Pokemon is a very easy game, so if you want Pokemon to be more of a challenge, and if Game Freak refuses to make it harder, you're just gonna have to make it harder for yourself then. I guess have level limits or just simply don't do Mega Evolutions.
Our fourth point of contention is the Exp Share. The fact that X and Y is relatively easy isn't controversial. It's almost universally accepted. The question is whether or not the Exp Share is the reason for this. Now that the Exp Share is back to distributing experience between the entire party, some people say that turning this key item off offers a more difficult X and Y experience. Others say that trainer battles themselves are simply way easier, regardless of how experience is distributed. They're both right though, it's an easy game. For example, gym leaders have 3 Pokemon with 3 moves, and on the other hand, yeah, it makes sense that if your Pokemon aren't over leveled due to the Exp Share, that battles will be a bit tougher.
Oh Jesus fucking Christ. Guys! Pokemon is an easy fucking game! How many times do I have to explain this to people? The only reason we thought Pokemon was hard at first is because when we played it, we were fucking kids and we didn't know anything about the game or any of that shit. God, I mentioned this a few years ago when I did my history of Pokemon. When I first played Yellow, when I battled Brock, I literally had Pikachu use Thundershock on Geodude and not understand why is it not affecting Geodude. When I did Thundershock, it always one-shot everyone else. Why is it not working on Geodude? Because I didn't understand the typing and all that crap. Pokemon is an inherently easy fucking game. And a lot of it too is, yeah, because Game Freak refuses to make the games harder. And of course, this might be controversial, but I actually like the Exp Share since some Gen 6 onward. I'm glad it gives out EXP to everyone. My only problem is when it gets to Gen 8, it's just being forced on us. So if you don't like the Exp Share being on all the time to make it too easy for you, simple. Just turn it off. Like me, I only have it on when I'm training. Outside that, I turn off the entire way. And even then, I'm still usually over-leveled. So for me, Pokemon, all the games are just easy. So to me, it's more of either us not putting limits on ourselves, or more importantly, it's just more of Game Freak refusing to make the games harder. But other than that, for me, Pokemon is just too easy. Which, hey, I like very easy games, so that makes it more enjoyable for me.
And finally, we have the fact that there is no third Pokemon game in Kalos. I'm not going to get into the fact that there's no Pokemon Z because it's kind of accepted as a negative thing by most people, so it's not controversial.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a fuck up. They should have done Z. I'm pretty sure everyone could agree with that. They should have done Z.
But Alola is, you know, its most controversial element. Many people think that there is a lot of handholding in Alola games and a ton of cutscenes. They think it's excruciating, halts any freedom, and is super boring if you aren't invested in the characters and story. But that's the thing. Those who enjoy story and therefore cutscenes, and those who simply don't find handholding to be all too annoying, or do find it annoying but love everything else in the game, find these games to be the most rewarding and immersive.
I didn't know people considered the cutscenes hand-holding. Now when it comes to hand-holding, yeah, that's bullshit. Those need to be optional. Pokemon is so fucking easy. I don't know why you'd really need tutorials for that. It's really that simple of a game. And when it comes to cutscenes, I like them. The only problem I didn't like was the crap after the post-game where, you have to beat, not the post-game, the Elite Four, where, once you beat the champion, then you gotta wait forever for the, credits to end. Then you have to be forced to battle Tapu Koko and all that. That's like 40 plus minutes of shit after you beat the Elite Four. God, I remember, when I did, beat Sun, several years ago for the first time I posted on YouTube, my battery almost died because of that. That was bullshit. That should not have been the case. But yeah, if people like to skip cutscenes, they should be able to. But I really don't have a problem with the cutscenes. I enjoy the story aspect of Pokemon. That doesn't really bug me.
Next is difficulty. Some people find these games easy, especially with the Exp Share on, while others find the totems, kahunas, and various bosses, especially Ultra Necrozma, to be tough. There are some that acknowledge the challenge but say that totems are unfair. Others say that there are so many inventive ways to defeat a totem or Ultra Necrozma. I'm personally one of those that believes that Ultra Sun and Moon are the most consistently challenging Pokemon games. I lost at least once to half of the totems, and of course Ultra Necrozma. And even a Kahuna, considering their Pokemon had perfect IVs. But then again, everybody has a different team and levels, so this is going to be anecdotal.
I mean, guys, I just explained this already. Pokemon is inherently a very, very easy game. For all of us that grew up playing the game, we know the in and outs of the game. It's fucking easy. The only way it can be hard is either we make it hard for ourselves, or Game Freak actually makes it a challenge. And Sun and Moon and all the games, they're no different for me. They're always easy. And hell, this is actually going to be mentioned in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon coming up soon, but people thought Necrozma was hard as shit? Bruh. Dude, all I had to do was Sturdy, Shiny, Skarmory. Hold on with Sturdy, Toxic, just stall with Poison. That's how easy Necrozma was for me. Like, Jesus Christ. It's not that fucking hard. And then when I did the offensive battle on Ultra Moon as Suzume, that was still easy as fuck. I've never experienced a Pokemon game that's really hard, other than ROMs, like the older games when... Not really the older games, more like when I was an idiot and we didn't know what we were doing when we were kids. Or it's very, 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 very rare. Maybe like once in a few months, maybe a battle that normally would be easy could be a challenge because something really bad happened to me. But other than that, the games are just fucking easy. Even with the Exp Share off, they're still just too fucking easy. That's why Nuzlocke and all that shit are a thing. So the only way you can really resolve the difficulty crap is, like I said, either you have to make more restrictions on yourself, or we need to pressure Game Freak to make the games harder. That's really the only way. And even if they did do that, it still would probably be too easy for us because we just know the inner workings of the game.
Speaking of which, trials seem to be very controversial. A lot of people like the change and commend Game Freak for finding something other than gym leaders for once. They of course find the totems to be a nice change of pace and like how they make sense within the culture of Alola, while others believe that they're basically the same as gyms, have repetitive wild battles and trial sites, and offer less trainer battles. They think trial puzzles are the most condescending and trivial part of the game, while those in the middle agree that trials have rudimentary puzzles, but that totems are way more challenging and dynamic than the average gym leader.
The trials literally are gym leaders, especially in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon when they have 8 of them. They're literally the same thing pretty much. I wished like in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, I think I said this before, but I really wish they made it so where, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, which of course is going to be brought up later when it comes to story, that I wish it took place like a year or two after Sun and Moon, where the league actually, the game actually had a league, like gyms and all of that, replaced the trials and all of that. And yeah, as I mentioned about the gym puzzles, I've mentioned this before, but I absolutely fucking hate gym puzzles. I've never liked them, and I wish for the love of God they would stop doing them forever. I fucking hate them so much. Yeah, not really as big of a fan of the trials, but hey, at least in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, it made to 8 of them, so now it feels a lot more like actual gym leaders. I actually agree with this a lot. It is difficult to relate and enjoy the Ultra Beasts, but I think to me it's more because they're post-game crap, and I'm really not much into the post-game stuff, so that's more like why I don't really enjoy them as much. Poi Pole, on the other hand, I actually enjoy because you can actually use it in a story, which I did in my Ultra Moon playthrough years ago. So I think if they were allowed to be catchable in the main story, I think the people would like them a lot more.
Z-moves are just another gimmick that people either hate or love. Some people think they are more naturally fitting within the franchise than Megas, that they have breathtaking animations, that it's much better how any Pokemon can use a Z-move, and that they expand the options of various strategies, while others think that they are simply a nuke button that makes competitive more shallow. Ultimately, people see it as another gimmick that would eventually be replaced.
It is a nuke. That's all it is! It is a nuke! The only thing that determines if it's effective or not is how time you do to move and all, but otherwise, it is a nuke. Especially in single player, oh god, which I use all the time, it is a fucking nuke. It makes it to the point where I don't even really have to switch out a lot of times. I can just use it, it will probably do either a one-shot or massive amount of damage, even if it's neutral or not very effective. But it largely is a nuke, and it really does not make it that much interesting.
The final controversies in Gen 7 are the existence of Ultra Sun and Moon and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Some people think that Ultra Sun and Moon are the definitive Gen 7 experience with much more to do than Sun and Moon, but with a less interesting plot. It's one of the hardest Pokemon games and added more content to its predecessor than Emerald and Platinum did. Others also see Let's Go as a delightful change of pace and an alternative way to introduce fans into the franchise. On the other hand, a lot of fans wanted Sun and Moon sequels instead, or at least one game instead of 2. They believe the Ultra games barely fixed any flaws in Sun and Moon, and that they came out too soon. Some even think that they're worse than Sun and Moon simply because of the botched plot. And then there are those who think Let's Go are the worst Pokemon games in the series. Too different, extremely easy, and completely unnecessary considering they are our 5th visit to Kanto without any real changes.
Okay, so now we're talking about both Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and LGPE. So I'll start with Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon first. I actually liked it a lot more than Sun and Moon. More Pokemon, which I liked. I did, like I said, I mentioned having the extra trial, so it's like an actual gym leader crap. The only thing I didn't really like about Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon was, like I said, about the story. I wish it was set a few years later where there was an actual Elite Four, and I would have loved if they did this too. I mentioned it. I would have loved it if there was a way for you to actually get your save file from Sun and Moon and somehow transfer it over to Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon so you can actually battle the trainers on Sun and Moon as the champions. Instead of how. I thought that would be so cool if I beat Sun and Moon, come back in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon to battle my team that won the title in Sun and Moon. And save shit from over games is possible. That was done in Black, White, Black 2, and White 2 in some regards, so it is possible. The main controversy with Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon is not only with this plot, it was more of due to the fact that the Switch came out and people thought we were going to finally get like a brand new game like entirely for the region. The game, and it just simply never happened till the next year. That was a lot of the problems with people had with the game. But I liked it. It's the last main series Pokemon game I enjoy and will only play, because then we get to LGPE. Yeah, as much as I shit on Swish, LGPE is way, way, way worse. First, when it comes to the national decks, as much as we shit on Swish, LGPE is worse. It has only the 150 Pokemon in Kanto, plus their Alolan forms in Meltan and Melmetal. That's it. At least Switch has over 500 or 600 now with the DLC. So LGP is worse when it comes to national decks, and it doesn't have held items, it doesn't have the abilities, and it does the stupid Pokemon Go crap, which I thought Pokemon Go was so boring and so stupid that it ruins LGPE for me. So yeah, LGPE is definitely of the main series games the worst in my eyes. And for the love of God, don't listen to people, Game Freak. Do not make a version for Johto or any other regions. Don't do LGPE or shit like that ever again. Please. Please keep Go mechanics out of Pokemon. Please.
And finally, Gen 8, the most controversial generation of them all. The first entry is, you guessed it, the National Dex controversy. One side believes the Dex cut ruins the spirit of Pokemon, that Game Freak's excuse for it was either a lie or lazy considering the animations and graphics of Sword and Shield were disappointing, hate that they can't bring some Pokemon they love into the newest generation, especially considering Game Freak basically promoted this aspect in Gen 7, and some even boycotted the game, and those whose Pokemon experience revolved around collecting the Pokemon themselves felt betrayed. Some even believe it was just the tip of the iceberg in a game that was already filled with many problems, and the most extreme of these opinions is that those who are complacent in the face of this problem are the reason Pokemon games are going downhill. The other side of the spectrum seems to be the fans whose experience of the game is literally unaffected by the lack of national decks, because they never transfer Pokemon from previous games and usually use Pokemon available within the game on their new team. A lot of fans felt it was inevitable that almost 900 Pokemon weren't practically sustainable in every Pokemon game, and they simply enjoy all the other aspects of Sword and Shield, believing that this wasn't a deal breaker. Ultimately, Pokemon has a relatively casual audience, so the average fan didn't even care and judged the game based on all the other aspects. And the DLC kinda remedied this controversy a bit, considering Pokemon are coming back in stages, just like people hoped they would, although the damage was already done.
Oh my dear God, I got a lot of shit to talk about here, right here. In fact, I might have to replay the video over and over and over again in order to get every single point across. But yeah, the National Dex controversy was a deal breaker for me and many, many other players. I will not play a game unless all the Pokemon are on there. That is final. That is not changing, never compromising on that. And of course, I mentioned it since right off the bat, I remember the DLC thing. Yeah, it's good that they brought the Pokemon back on the DLC, but two things. One, we gotta remember, not all the Pokemon are still gonna be added up. I did the math on this when it was first announced. There's still about a third of the Pokemon still not in the games if all the DLC is in. So even if they add them all in, good, that's still not enough. We need to pressure them until they add every single one back into Switch. And until then, I will not touch the game. It's Switch and shit. And second, when it comes to DLC, which I think is going to be brought up, that's part of the reasons why we're pissed off with Game Freak, because they lied to us. Because one of the reasons that they said that they're not going to have all the Pokemon in the game is because of balance and competitiveness. Then why the fuck are you bringing the Pokemon back in? Honestly, not only were you lying, I bet they did this planned out for the DLC and all that crap instead. Because you know damn well that was well planned out. That's how all games are when it comes to the DLC. It's all planned out years in advance. Don't deny it. And then when it comes to balance, just simply have bans and tiers. You don't need to take out Pokemon from the game in order to ensure competitiveness. It's just garbage and bullshit. And anyone that defends it still, fuck you. And I know you're going to be really triggered by saying this if you bought Swish and play it, but it is true. You are part of the problem why Pokemon's falling apart. And this goes for other video game series too. If they fuck up, like in this case with Swish, don't fucking buy the games. They need to be boycotted, because then if the sales are bad, they'll realize, oh shit, we fucked up. We need to fix shit if we're going to get sales back to acceptable levels. You need to hit them where it fucking hurts. And the only place they'll listen, their wallet. And if you keep buying the games, even though they're shit, they're not going to listen. And if anything, they're going to be more encouraged to do lazy and worthless shit, because they know they can get away with it because you buy the games. So yeah, if you did buy the games, you are part of the problem. Sorry if you don't like it, but that's the facts. If you care about Pokemon and all the other games, don't fucking buy the games if they're shit. Make them suffer and they'll start listening. That's why I never got LGPE, because it's dog shit. That's why I never got Swish, because of the National Dex debacle. Until they fix the shit how I want it to be, I'm not going to play the games. That is a deal breaker, and it's that important to me. So too fucking bad if you don't like it. You are the problem if you bought Swish. Sorry if you don't like it, but the truth hurts. So deal with it. And then when it comes to the other arguments about the technical limitations, bullshit. Bullshit. The games can handle that many Pokemon. All the previous other games could handle it. This can too. There's no argument about the technical limitations. And if there is, that shows how bad the Swish is. And you're probably wondering, like, why is it? Why are you people on BBND so obsessed with the National Dex? At least I can explain it for why I am. The biggest reason why I don't want them to cut Pokemon from the game is, I'm afraid, because this happens in other video game franchises, especially games that I enjoy, like The Sims, for example. I'm afraid if they get away with this and they don't face any sort of backlash, they're going to keep doing it to the point where they make games with less features. They're going to cut them out and make you buy the shit later for stuff that were in previous games. Like Sims, for example. Oh god, Sims 4. Oh, what an utter train wreck that was. Oh god, they removed so many features that were in 2 and 3 from 4. It was so bad, and the games were overwhelmingly hated in the community. Same goes for Command & Conquer, a game that I grew up a lot playing. Oh god, fuck you EA for killing that franchise too. Fuck you so much. When it comes to cut features, you must not ever support it. You just can't. Because it's going to fuck you over later. It's an anti-consumer practice. And that's a big reason, another reason why I'm against them removing the Pokemon from the games. Because I know what will happen in the future if they keep doing this. Because that's what happened in the other games. And once I explain to you, you should be like, oh, okay, now I understand. That's why, and I will no longer buy the games because of it. It's for your own safety as a consumer. You should always consider that. And that's why, as I said, for the last year plus, until all the Pokemon are in Swish, I will not play it. I won't buy it. I am not going to touch it. Same goes for LGPE. Until the games are right for what I want, I will not touch it. Get that for your thick fucking heads for people that don't seem to understand that.
Animation is next. Considering Game Freak cited better animation as a reason for the Dex cut, people scrutinize the already worn-out animations in Sword and Shield. There are those who feel they are an embarrassment, and those who acknowledge the disappointment, but also the many cool new move animations, and how expressive Pokemon are in camp, and the new characters.
Yeah, this was another problem with the controversy with the National Dex cut. Not only they said the reason was because of competitive balances, but it's also to have better animations and all that. And for that just didn't happen. That just did not happen outside the Pokemon that were created for the game exclusively. That just didn't happen for the older Pokemon. They fucking lied. That's just the end of it. There is literally no argument you can make to defend the National Dex cut. It was wrong, period, end of discussion. And I know Game Freak is more than capable to do all those animations. If you think not, you have low expectations of them. Fuck, even college students, as we saw last year, could make simple, really good animations of some Pokemon. Now can you imagine that with multiple people who are professionals at this? No. No. They could do it. I know they can do all the animations for all the Pokemon to make them as expressive as hell. I know they can do it. They just don't want to. And they fucking should do it, because that would be awesome if the Pokemon had really good expressions and animations and all that crap. And I know they can, because the animations they were forced to make with all the new Pokemon Switch, they look fucking awesome. Like Cinderace's one move, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. That looked awesome. So if they can do it for them, they can do it for the rest. I'm not buying any argument that it's impossible for them to do it. Bullshit. They can do it. I'm getting fucking sick and tired of talking this, but the people that defend this now National Dex crap need to have it metaphorically violently shoved into their heads that they're just wrong to defend this. It's not defendable. That's the end of it. You are wrong. Get it for your head.
Dynamax is next. Some people see it as the least creative gimmick, and in practice, less strategic. Others think it's an epic spectacle and a good balance between Z-moves and Mega Evolutions, and not even close to lazy in terms of design, since to some, Gigantamax Pokemon look more interesting than Megas, and a lot of fans put the new moves to great use.
They are free turn nukes that boost your stats. They are OP. The people that defend this shit are just wrong. Same goes to the people that defend Z-moves. They're free turn nukes with stats. Just accept it. The only strategic aspect of it is when to do it. Other than that, they're not really strategic or competitive whatsoever. And if anything, they destroyed the competitive balance that they said were the reason why they had to do the National Dex cut. And then when it comes to designs, like I said, it's subjective. I don't really care.
The wild area is controversial too. Some people think it's barren and lifeless, filled with terrible graphics and boring landscapes, while others find it to be a big step in the right direction, a highlight of the region, and greatly expanded upon in the DLC, indicating Game Freak's progression and future intentions to improve this feature.
I'm not the person to really care about the graphics. Dude, like I've said over times, I like the N64 and PS1 graphics over the graphics of games today. But yeah, the graphics for the game are pretty bad when you consider the fact that it's part of the reason, too, why they said they had to cut the National Dex. They did not have a lot of effort into it. That's just the facts. Sorry. And that's why people shat on the wild area. It was merited and deserved.
The Exp Share is still controversial. People dislike it for the same reason as before, on top of the fact that it's permanent now, while others still like it on top of the fact that it's finally well balanced and complements the game's level curve and wireless PC.
This was the next big problem I had for Switch besides the National Dex crap. That made it worse. I didn't care about the Exp Share, like I said, in Gen 6 and 7. I like that feature to train everyone at once. But what I don't like is it being forced upon us. That, if anything, will make the game even more easier than it already is, because I'll be so over-leveled all the damn time. And I'm sure, like, that people said, oh, the level curve's great. I'm pretty sure if I played this game, even if I tried as best as possible to avoid the problems with the Exp Share problem, I'm sure I'm going to be either over-leveled by the time I get to, like, the Elite Four and all that crap, or the game will still be in the end just too easy. Because Pokemon is inherently a very easy game. Which, like I said, not a problem for me. I like very easy games. But the people that have a problem with it being very easy, it's not really something you can resolve unless you put restrictions on yourself or Game Freak makes it harder. And of course, Game Freak's making it even harder for people to do restrictions on themselves because of this forced Exp Share. Come on, man. You can't defend this. God, there were so many people. Like, I remember when Distant Kingdom did his video about the forced Exp Share, and people fucking lied about him, acting like he wanted to remove the feature when he specifically said he wanted the option to be able to turn it off. Stop defending this. People need to stop defending things that are just so overwhelmingly wrong. No, it should not be forced to have the Exp Share on. If we want it off, we should be able to turn it off. End of discussion.
The final starters are controversial too, although they have been for the last 4 gens, but this time even more so considering the Prevos are fan favorites and people dislike the trend of having humanoid starters. Considering all 3 final Evos are bipedal, people are kinda pissed. But most have a personal favorite just like always, and either think Inteleon has a very neat concept, Cinderace has a great personality, and that Rillaboom is as solid as most starters and exactly what we expected, at least in terms of concept. Starters are incredibly subjective and expectations are almost never met considering how much hype there is for their reveal.
I never heard any controversy about the stars, but then again, most of the shit I heard was about the Exp Share and the National Dex. But like I said, subjective, don't care about the designs. But I will say, when I saw the final evolutions and all that crap, I did decide if they ever fix Switch to the point where I could play it, I would start off with Sobble, because I was undecided at first what I would start off with at first. But Inteleon looked the coolest of all the final evolutions of the starters.
Hop is a character that some think is a copy of How, annoyingly upbeat and one note. Others love his character arc, development, competitive friendship, and understand that his motivations and personality are different than How's.
This sounds like more of a problem with rivals in general. That's been the case for several years.
And finally, the DLCs. There are those who believe DLCs in general are a scummy practice, especially if the base game is heavily flawed, that the content is too expensive on an already expensive game, that they don't add in as many Pokemon as they should, that all the new features should have been in the main game in the first place, that Game Freak should have been upfront with their intentions from the beginning, and that the Isle of Armor had a short plot. On the other hand, a lot of fans think DLCs are a step in the right direction, better than having to replay the same game in a more expensive third version, only to encounter a disappointing amount of new content, that the exploration and open, seamless, and prettier overworld of the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra are exactly what we were missing in Sword and Shield, that incrementally adding back old Pokemon is a great way to make the meta more fresh, that it's nice that you don't have to pay for the DLCs in order to transfer the hundreds of new Pokemon added to the DLC, and simply that the new content is interesting and worth the price.
By the way, this is the last thing of the video, so thank God too. I've been doing this for over an hour plus, so I need to stop and get a drink from all this talking. But yeah, I'm part of the group that think DLC are just straight up scum and anti-consumerist. And if I had the way, I probably would ban them. I am of the belief that video games, when they come out, they should be done. They should be fully done. Games should not have to have huge patches and all that crap to fix them from being broken at game release. This happens to a lot of video games over the last several years when they come out. They come out broken and they're not playable till you get a patch sometime later. That's just simply not acceptable, and the gaming community needs to never accept that. The games need to be fully finished and working when they come out, and game companies need to be pressured to stop doing this shit. And also, yeah, Game Freak lied. We know damn well that the DLC was planned from the very start, which is why it made it even more frustrating when they lied about the National Dex debacle. Oh, this is the future of Pokemon. We're not going to have all the Pokemon in the game. We're not going to do DLC until we do, and we're adding all the Pokemon back in. Oh? Yeah, exactly. They fucking lied. Just accept it. And scummy practices like that should never be allowed or accepted. The only two things I'll say I'm glad about the DLC, though, is that they're adding Pokemon back in. But remember, it's not all of them. Until all of them are back in, though, we have to keep applying the pressure. It's not enough. But at least they are still adding Pokemon in. And, of course, I like it that it made free so you don't have to, get the games in order to get them. You can at least trade them instead. Those are two good things. But otherwise, no, I don't like the DLC feature for Swisher and the Pokemon games in the future. I'd rather get a whole new game and restart the whole journey all over again. And most of the DLC, at least for the one that came out, all that shit, I literally went up through it when the DLC came out. I looked up all the features. Literally none of them interest me whatsoever, other than add more Pokemon and all that. Other than that, none of it. All of it to me sounded like post-game crap. And like I said, I'm not really into post-game crap. Once I beat the Elite Four, I'm usually done and restart the game. So literally none of the DLC interests me. Now, if they did it as a whole brand new game, that would actually interest me because I can do a whole brand new game all over again. That is more interesting to me. So no, I would actually rather than make a brand new game instead of the DLC. But yeah, that was definitely a very interesting video. I loved it. Go check out TrueGreen7. I watched him for several years, too. He's pretty good. Oh, man. That's funny to see, like, a lot of these controversies that I've never heard about. And if anything, my experience, it was the exact opposite in the community. Like, people complain about having only Pokemon from Gen 5 in black and white and all that crap. Like, a lot of these controversies I've never heard of, or if anything, my experience was the exact opposite. But as people point out in the comments, yes, sadly, the Pokemon community, and not just Pokemon community, all video game communities are, like, really too fucking fickle. I mean, there are things that I agree with, like the Pokemon community, that they need to fix, but then there are things that I'm fine with the games being as they are, and I know a lot of people don't like that. But, of course, I would strongly recommend everyone check out my video on what I want Pokemon to do in the future to make it great again. That was very fun, doing a lot of work on it. So go check that out. And go check out TrueGreen7's channel if you get the chance. Remember, link is in the description as well.